Perfect. We're rolling. Jeremy, thank you for taking the time, buddy. It's great to catch up a
Always
little
good
bit.
to
Great
see you, my man. Always good to see you.
Yeah, no, it's been a long road, as we were kind of just catching up beforehand, and it was nice with all the bad things that have happened from quarantine, a couple of the good things, and one of the things kind of took me a little bit to get to was this bad boy right here. I was finally able to take some time, get that, and there's so many great takeaways from that book, and it's funny kind of going in and being a part and, kind of remembering some of those certain instances and stuff like that. But one of the things that I really took away and kind of stuck to heart for me was failing by not setting shorter deadlines. That really stuck out. And I was like, man, I do that a lot. That'll happen where I'm not setting and I'll just be like, I'm going to get to it. I'm going to get to it. And it seems like there are certainly a bunch of takeaways from that book, but that really kind of stuck out to me.
Yeah, writing the book was a fun adventure for me. When the publisher reached out to me and said, hey, we're interested in having you write a book. Have you ever thought about doing that? And, if so, what would you want to write about? And I've always been fascinated by this idea that everybody, no matter who you are, has moments of failure. Walt Disney fired from his first job for a lack of imagination. Steve Jobs fired from Apple before returning them to glory. Michael Jordan cut twice in high school. But why was it that those guys were able to deal with that adversity and use it as a catalyst to become world class? And some other people experience that type of adversity and can never overcome it. They wear it, they own it. It kind of owns them. Mm-hmm. And so I wrote back to the publisher. I said, I want to write a book on failure. And, they wrote me back in a kind way saying, no, thanks. Nobody wants to read a book on failure. But, I convinced them that, this is not a book about failure. This is a book about winning. This is a book about how to become great at anything, using kind of anecdotes from my life through my journey of the NFL and in the Olympics, but also other people's stories like the three that I mentioned. And it really was a fun adventure. I learned a lot. The thesis of the book is there's a way to use the inevitable moments in our life where we don't accomplish our goals to recalibrate our compass to success. And I think that's what's most important, is learning the skill and ability to use these moments in our lives that are going to happen no matter what, to better inform the compass of success, to learn from them. But to your point, you mentioned the time frame, to move on from them. We cannot wear these things. They do not own us. They do not define us. We just have to use them to keep moving in life. And so, yeah, the book's called Fueled by Failure. It's on Amazon, and it was a fun adventure.
Yeah, no, it's a great read. So it's a good holiday for anybody out there to check it out. I would definitely recommend it. But it's one of those things, I had Stephen Long, who I know you used for a time there. He was on the podcast, and it was great to get his perspective and just listen to how, when he's going through and talking about goal setting and kind of game planning and coming up with those certain things, a lot of the different people I've had on have a bunch of different tactics. Hannah Kearney taking notes and writing everything down, making all kinds of lists, and having Nate Chex as the CEO kind of having a 2-week block of everything set out, CEO for Roan. And the interesting thing from performance psychologist Stephen Long was just like, yeah, I'm pretty much now, today, and then tomorrow. There's a couple things I'll add in, but that's really just that shorter kind of focus on really tackling in the moment and what you can take care of day to day.
Yeah, that sounds like a healthy way to live. It's not the way that I live. I wish that was the case sometimes, but I also think my long-term thinking has also benefited me, in various ways. I'll give you an example. When I was 19, I was an Olympian. I was a world champion in skiing. I just finished my college football freshman season at the University of Colorado as an All-American. You would think for a guy like me at 19, I would be kind of on top of the world. I mean, these were the two biggest dreams that I had, play major Division I college football and be an All-American and be a world champion in the sport of freestyle skiing that I love so much. But it was a good feeling, but there was this overwhelming feeling of fear. And that fear was, what's my life going to look like after football and skiing? We all know, no matter who you are, professional athletics ends at a very relatively young age in the grand scheme of like the average lifespan of a human being. So we all go through this reinvention period. And it was that fear and long-term planning that ultimately led me to where I am today, as a tech CEO and a founder of a nonprofit. But I had to like pick up every rock along the way. I invested in things, along the way, both from a mindshare perspective and from a capital perspective, that didn't work. But all those paths led me to ultimately what was my transition. And if anyone were to ask me, what am I, most grateful for? I'm definitely grateful for the success and the experiences, but I'm most grateful for the transition, because I felt like in a very short period of time, I was able to transition from being a professional athlete into a tech CEO and founder and a nonprofit founder. And I think it's rare. I think that's the exception, not the norm, because people get caught flat-footed. People get caught flat-footed. They think it's going to last forever, and it doesn't. And one day you're kind of in this new world where it's like, I don't have to go to ski practice. I don't have to go to football practice. Those things no longer exist. Now I have to kind of redefine and reshape my life and what it's going to look like.
Yeah, kind of self-motivate there. I mean, one of the things you touched on it earlier that has always, and I've always been aware of it and kind of just seen it being around you and everything else, is just the curiosity. You've always kind of, where's that curiosity come from? I think that helps with kind of, as you talk about in the book, like planting those seeds and kind of having those, looking under those different rocks and let's see what's under here. I mean, where's that curiosity kind of come? Have you always had it?
I've always had the belief that I'm an expert at none and a student of everything. And that intellectual curiosity has helped me in a couple ways. In athletics, it never gave me a sense of entitlement. So when I made the US ski team at 15, world champion Olympian at 19, two-time Olympian at 23, three-time world champion, and then drafted in the NFL at 24, at the age of 24, I never felt entitled. I never felt like I made it. I always felt like I was chasing greatness, and I never felt like I achieved it. And it was that intellectual curiosity and I guess lack of feeling of achievement that drove me to continue to invest, to continue to work, to continue to do the things that sometimes you forget to do when you're on top. Most people say it's easier to get to number one and harder to stay at number one, because that level of success, can be a bit of a drug in the sense of, maybe I don't need to work out at 6 a.m. anymore, and do the things that I needed to do. And, now in this new phase of my life as a CEO and founder, oh my gosh, I learned new things every single day. I started Integrate 9 years ago with an idea on a whiteboard. We're now over 300 employees across the globe. Big company, like hundreds of millions of dollars. And it's like, sometimes you have this imposter syndrome, like, wait, I'm the CEO? Like, wait, no, who? Like, I'm not supposed to be the CEO. Like, you go through these moments, and what I love about it, and the similarities between athletics and being an entrepreneur, is there's always things to learn. There's always new things to learn. There's new people to talk to. There's new experiences to be had. And I don't believe you ever become a master. I really don't. I just think you're always on this continual path of learning.
Yeah. I mean, it's super fascinating to me because, I think that there are a lot of people out there that are just so into their field and they don't really want to branch out. And as you say, once the road ends, like you're caught flat-footed, you kind of don't know the next step or what to move on to. And it's interesting, like that curiosity, because you've always had the passion for winning and the drive has always been there. But I think that curiosity is kind of a unique feature that is rare to find, for sure.
Well, and I think you've experienced this a good deal in your life as well, and everybody does to some extent. If we live long enough, we all redefine ourselves. We all go through these reinventions throughout the decades of our lives, and reinvention can be very scary because most human beings don't like the unknown. And I think that's a human quality that most of us have. Like, we're scared of the unknown. I mean, we like predictability, right? I mean, that's a very human trait. So those moments can be, really scary in the sense of like, gosh, I don't know what to expect. Like, what's around that corner? But at the same time, there's this amazing amount of energy and inertia that's created from those moments in our life. And if we can tap in to the signal and eliminate the noise, right?
Yeah.
The signal is kind of the compass. The noise is at all the surrounding things trying to push us off of our path. And we can really lock into what that signal is.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the most meaningful journeys of our lives, these pivotal and critical changes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting too, to kind of, I feel like you have to make sure that you surround yourself with the right people that are willing to be out of the comfort zone, right? I mean, a lot of it, being uncomfortable is, like you said, it's not an inherently human trait. We're not like, let's, just continue with the 9 to 5 or whatever else, like kind of bouncing around. It's not fun. I mean, I remember when I've started this, I'm like 30 episodes in, but the first one, I was like, man, I sound awful. This is not right. I don't know. I just kind of like to talk.
I'm not doing all these like self-defeating thoughts that we,
of course,
that we always have. And that's just really, a normal quality of doing something new.
So for you, who has like helped, or who do you use to kind of lean on when you're going out of these comfort zones and you're kind of a little bit uncomfortable? Like who are those people that have kind of helped you along your journey and along the way?
Gosh, there's so many people. It'd be impossible to know them all. But as I reflect on, my life, I mean, your dad is right up there near the top.
Mm-hmm.
Your dad was not just my ski agent for basically my whole career. But he was one of my, main go-to advisors. It was like your dad and my dad, like that was the list of people. And I have such a love and admiration for your dad, for, everything that he has done for me and, continues to do for me as a friend. Andy Carroll is a legend. So, he's a guy, and, Bobby, I was really lucky in tech, and I'll tell you why. When I was with the Pittsburgh Steelers, but I was really at that point in my career, I'm like, okay, I don't think I want to do sports that much more. I felt my mind moving on. That's not necessarily my body. I was 26 years of age. I mean, I could have skied for many, many more years. I mean, most people find it somewhat ironic that I only skied 4 years of World Cup.
Yeah.
2002 was my first season of World Cup. That was an Olympic year, and 2006 was my last.
Yeah.
And so, most skiers ski, 16 years or whatever. So I was around skiing for a very short period of time. But I knew I wanted to move on. So I went to the TED conference, and I didn't even know what the TED conference was at the time, like the TED videos. And I was just like, hey, I heard, really inspirational people go to this thing, and maybe I could, find some inspiration. It's the first night of the TED conference. I know not a single person there. And I sit down for dinner at this round table. This guy sits next to me. Happens to be a Philadelphia Eagle fan. His name's Chad. So Chad and I hit it off. We're talking about the birds. He's in tech. I'm like, that's cool. I said, where do you work? He said, I work at YouTube. I said, that's awesome. I like YouTube. And, the table starts filling up. We're talking. And then, somewhere around dessert, I said, what do you do at YouTube? He said, oh, I started it. I'm the founder. It's Chad Hurley. I had no idea, and so Chad and I became really good friends. And before I knew it, it's like Chad Hurley. And next to him is Sergey Brin, founder of Google. And next to him is Bill Maris, who built Google Ventures. And so I built this tribe like really early in tech of like people that I was starstruck to be around.
Right.
But I would say one of my best qualities has been to be a sponge in the room. I love being a little bit in the background, not talking a lot, but observing and just like being that sponge, and to be around guys like that and to be a sponge of what they're doing. I mean, transforming the internet, transforming the world, these guys, that provided an amazing amount of inspiration for me to get into tech and start a company. And these are still the, guys and many other now that I call upon when I'm stuck, when I need help, when I need advice. And I'm super grateful and humbled to be able to do that and have these types of, luminary figures caring about what I'm up to.
Now, talking about being like a sponge for you, is that is that like a few takeaways from the moment, or is that, because I mean, it can be hard when you go through and you know, like any book that I'll read, or you know, a lot of those different things, or you listen to an audio book, it can be so hard to like, oh, that's a good thing to remember, oh, that's a good thing to, you know, like, okay, I'll write that down. So for you, when you're kind of in the background and you're trying to absorb as much information as you can, is it like, all right, what are the 3 big takeaways, or is it, okay, you need to remember that, get the iPhone out?
Yeah. You know, I don't know if I've ever had an original thought in my whole life. That shows you how dumb I am, right? So when you talk about like being a sponge, it's like learning through osmosis. And I think I learned it really through my father, who's a psychologist. So at a young age, having a dad as a psychologist, he taught me to be introspective in the world, to analyze my surroundings, always know what's happening in my surroundings, and read the environment. He used to say that all the time. Jeremy, read your environment. Yeah, and if maybe I was acting one way. So from a very young age, my dad, Larry, taught me to read the environment. And so, no, it's not just about like 3 takeaways. It's like analyzing everything. Like, what's the demeanor? What's the energy level? What's the cadence of conversation? What are the questions being asked? I think the smartest people in the world ask the best questions. The smartest people in the world don't give the best answers necessarily. The smartest people in the world I've ever been around ask the best questions. And it's the questions that draw out the wisdom and extract the wisdom of others. I'm not great at asking questions. I need to get a lot better. It's something I work on. It's a hard skill to have. But every once in a while, I'll nail a really good question from somebody I'm talking to. Yeah. And I'll get more information, wisdom out of that person that I could have, had in 2 years of MBA class or whatever. And so I think if you're lucky enough to be around greatness, if you're lucky to be around great people, and you're thoughtful enough to build a relationship beyond asking them for something. Right. I built a relationship with Chad Hurley. I said, hey, let me take you through an Olympic lake circuit. I'll make you puke in 5 minutes. I guarantee it. He's like, yeah, bring it on. Well, it's like maybe 6 minutes, but it happened, so like, it wasn't me saying, hey, Chad, I want to get into tech. Will you help me? It was like, hey, let me show you a skill that I learned and, build that deep connections. But I think if you're fortunate enough to be around greatness, like I have been able to do in my life, got a good chance of being great if you pay attention and you listen and you learn and you ask good questions.
Gotta ask the good questions. No, it's one of those things though. And I think I'll find, 9 out of 10 times when I'm having conversations with different people and around them, you can just tell when the eyes glaze over and you're having a conversation with them.
You're reading your environment.
Like, you're just waiting for you to talk. All right, let's. I'll just be quiet now. And all right, what were you going to say? Let's bring that out.
No, that's good. That's part of reading the environment, reading your audience. The other thing that I really had to learn pretty quickly in technology or being a CEO that I had no idea about in sports is everybody likes to ingest information in different ways. Yeah. And I never knew that. I've been around football guys, Olympic guys and gals my whole life. That's kind of like one-track minded people who are pretty similar in nature. And I was thrown into an environment where I had to communicate with engineers, computer scientists. Well, and I'll give you an example. Early days at Integrate. I love big ideas. So like, give me a whiteboard. I love being like, hey, this is how we're going to take over the world. And I would draw these fun pictures and I'd bring these things together and I'd have one side of the room at Integrate, like so pumped up, ready to rock, ready to run through walls to go change the world. And I have another side of the room looking at me with that like glossed over look of fear. I never understood it until I got certified to administer the Myers-Briggs. Myers-Briggs is a personality test to understand how humans like to ingest information and how they like to deliver information. And it was at that point where I learned like engineers, not all of them, but a lot of them are sequential thinkers. So if you're communicating with an engineer or a sequential thinker, they like 1 + 1 = 2. Yeah. And if they can't find a path to get to ultimately where you're trying to get them to, meaning 1 + 1 = 2 and 2 + 2 = 4, et cetera, then they have a really hard time ingesting the information you're giving them. So for me, a big idea guy, like I have no idea how we're going to get here. I just know this is where we need to get to. Sending that message to a bunch of engineers stressed them out. And I don't even think they really liked me, right? Because I was like this leader that stressed them out. But I've had to learn along the way, but I think it's a valuable skill for anybody, is when you say something to somebody, they don't always hear what you think they said.
Right.
And it's a great idea, especially with closer relationships, of asking the question, hey, when I said that, whatever it is, how did you experience that? What did you experience me saying?
Right.
And it is fascinating to hear like the differing things that people will replay back to what you said. And oftentimes it's totally misunderstood.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds honestly a lot like you're turning into a coach, dude, for sure. Because I mean, it's one of the things coach, you can't have just one arrow in the quiver, right? You have to be able to. Each personality is a little bit different, and you have to find a different way to get that light bulb to go off, right? Get this information to reach you correctly. And one of the main things when I'm coaching is you got to communicate. I'd rather over communicate than under communicate, and I can't fix problems I don't know about. So it is one of those vital things, being able to reach those people and communicate effectively.
I mean, that's spot on. And one of the conclusive data points as to why people stay at companies is because they're on a path of learning, meaning their direct report helps them learn and helps them solve questions or solve problems by asking questions rather than telling them the answer. I mean, this is innate in who we are as human beings. We actually do like to learn.
Yeah.
And especially if we're open-minded enough to do so. And what do great coaches do? Great coaches help us learn, right?
Yeah.
Like, isn't that the goal of a coach? I don't think of myself as a coach, although I'm flattered by the comment, because I think
it's true.
to me, there's nothing better than a coach.
Yeah.
But I think of myself as a student of life. And there's topics that I become fascinated with, and when I'm fascinated with something, I want to jump in like cannonball in the water. I don't want to like put my foot in and test the temperature of the water. Like I just want to jump fully in, immerse myself, read all the books, talk to people, and try to try to understand whatever those topics are.
Now, kind of jumping in and being able to immerse yourself, how do you tackle time management? Because that's one of those interests, especially for you. I mean, with the Wish of a Lifetime Foundation and the philanthropy, and then also running Integrate and and then also your personal life. I mean, there's so many different things. How do you kind of tackle time management and not get overwhelmed?
Yeah, there's a lot going on in my life, from a personal perspective to building a home to running a business to Wish of a Lifetime just got acquired by AARP. So integrating into a multiple billion-dollar organization with 38 million members. And here's what I'll say about it. Here's what I've learned. I think the notion of work-life balance is a fallacy. Okay. I don't think there's a balancing act. I don't think it ever balances itself out. So what I believe in and what I have subscribed to is work-life integration. And for me, the word integration is much more intentional than trying to balance something. Mm-hmm. And so what I do is I get very intentional with my time every week. Fortunately, I have great people around me. I have a chief of staff who helps me operationalize projects and integrate. I have an executive EA who helps me, balance out my time and structure my time. And I really rely on, a big team to, do the projects that I don't think I'm the best suited for. So to be able to delegate, hey, this came to my desk, it's probably best suited for you. Mm-hmm. And to be able to get good at delegation, and then just get really intentional with time. And this is something I would encourage everybody to think about, whether you're running a company or whether you're an athlete, whether you're not currently working, even if you're in school. And the way that you do it, I like to do it on a Sunday. I like to look on a Sunday. I look at Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday in my time. And I go over everything that I need to do. And I've gotten to know myself, good enough. So I'm like, that's not going to work for me. That's going to stress me out, or that's going to take away time from this. And there's a couple non-negotiables in my schedule. And the first one is fitness. So from 7 in the morning till 9:30 in the morning, nothing can be scheduled. Now we have an office in London, and that's like the most convenient time for folks in London to connect. But when I connect with the London team, it's at 9:30 Mountain Time. And there's a reason for that. That's the time where I got to take care of my fitness, man. I got to get on a treadmill. I got to get in the sauna. I got to sweat. I got to stretch. I got to do some meditation, because I know if I don't do it at that window, it's gone. I'm not doing it at 5 o'clock and 6 o'clock. The day just completely escapes. Mm-hmm. But it takes a lot of discipline to make sure that time is completely blocked out. Now there's other variables for other people. I mean, maybe if you work for a company and you have a call at 7 o'clock, you can't tell your boss, I'm not going to be on that because I'm working out. I totally get that.
Mm-hmm.
But you can have the conversation like, health and fitness or whatever it is, time with family is a priority. And I think getting really intentional of how you fit those things into your schedule you'll reach a point where you feel like you're being efficient with your time.
Mm-hmm. So going in and make sure you're kind of intentional with your priorities, it sounds like as well. Like, obviously for you, fitness is a priority and it gets those endorphins going. And then like, all right, bring on the busyness of the day and what's going to happen there. Now, one of those things I wanted to touch on, and I was curious about, I saw you're on that Rogue assault runner. Is that thing pretty sweet?
What is it?
Your treadmill you got there.
Woodway curve. Yeah.
Woodway curve. Is that thing pretty?
Woodway curve. Yeah. So what I love about, I got into running about almost 2 years ago, about a year and a half ago. So I'm relatively new into kind of the joggers world. And I love it for a lot of reasons, but I never enjoyed running on a treadmill. One, because of the impact, and two, because you're running on a road that's moving itself. So it makes it easier. Like when you turn a treadmill on, basically the road moves. And when you run outside, the road doesn't move. So there's more friction and it's harder. Mm-hmm. And I found this treadmill called the Woodway curve. It's kind of, curved and you have to run on it in order to move it. And so it's actually harder than running outside because it's at a curve and you're kind of running at a 3-degree angle. But it's very low impact. Yeah, it's been phenomenal for me. And I believe that without health and wellness, and I'm not just talking physical, but I'm talking mental, all kind of fully encompassing. I don't think we can be good husbands. I don't think we can be good athletes. I don't think we can be good human beings. I think that's the center of the universe is like our health, our physical health and our mental health. And so I believe in making sure that we take care of that first. If we do that, then what I think can happen is we become great employees. We become great family members. We become good spouses, because we're taking care of ourselves. So that's my priority set. And if I were to ever work for somebody that said, well, I don't care about your health and wellness, I'd quit. And I don't care how much money I was making. Or I don't care how, I'd find another boss. Like, if you can't understand that's should be a priority. And if you can't work around that, then it's probably not somebody that I would want to work for.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I've been watching on Instagram and we chat a little bit back and forth. And the one thing that I really was able to take away is not only, I don't know if you got a chance to read Matthew Walker's Why We Sleep, but that's one of the that has been fantastic. That was annoyingly to everyone in the family last year, that was all their Christmas presents. So I think everybody
that's a great Christmas.
That was everybody's Christmas. I think my brother was, he was definitely a little pissed off. Like, dude, I got kids. I don't have time to. I'm like, yeah, you got to make time, man. You got to make some time to get some sleep.
It's all about priorities.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And the other thing is a little bit of fasting. This summer I did my first, I did a 182 hours water only, which was good. And I know that you've done a couple of those, and it definitely it's amazing to see the difference in focus and how the body adapts and changes. I feel like that first 2 or 3 days, like 72 hours, you're kind of a little bit hungry. And then when you wake up that next day, it's like, okay, you're kind of just go into a little bit of coast mode, and the focus mentally is pretty incredible, I feel like.
I love the topic, so we could talk about this topic for the next 10 hours. So I love the topic of fasting. I actually found I got myself into fasting out of necessity, not because out of vanity. Something, weird thing happened to me, Bobby. Like when I don't know, 35, that was kind of 35, 36. My digestion has always moved very, very fast and like very efficient, and felt like, like food in, food out, let's go as energy. And it's like my digestion just stopped. It was very strange. And I would eat and I would get, my stomach would get bloated. I'd feel like things weren't moving in there. And I tracked it back to a couple of things. Obviously, one was diet. I was eating the wrong things. I was eating inflammatory things like dairy. Lots of, red meats and those types, lots of sugar, processed foods. And as I moved more towards more of a plant-rich diet, not exclusively, I'll still eat some means of it. It helped a little bit. The other thing was exercise. So this was before I was doing any cardio. So think about
No,
it.
you used to hate to run. You were not a
Oh,
big
I
stretcher
hated
back.
cardio, man.
You
You
like
know
biking.
that.
You hated cardio.
I hated it. You wanted me to go on runs with you and hikes. I'm like, I'm not doing that. And so I changed those two things, and it helped dramatically. But what really was that helped me break through was the fast. I did a 7-day water only fast. I did it under the guidance of one of my Olympic buddies who does a lot of this and researches a lot of it, Paulo Ono, and he's got a lot of information on his social networks about this. I got into Peter Attia, which I know you know, and he's kind of one of the godfathers of fasting. And magical things happen to my body. And you probably know about autophagy, where your cells start to repair themselves. I mean, the body is amazing. Like if you just give it a break from food, like human beings, we eat too often. And, tens of thousands of years ago, food was not available every, 3 times a day.
Right.
You ate a big meal, and then, maybe you didn't kill the buffalo the next day, and you didn't eat the next day.
Yep.
So, fasting has been a normal part of society for such a long time. And, after you fast and you stop burning all the carbs, you go into what's called ketosis. And ketosis is when you start burning the fat. And by the way, the body loves to burn fat. It's a great source of energy for the brain. The brain thrives on burning fat, but it's uncomfortable for most. You get that keto headache, your body's like, whoa, what's going on? Like we're going into survival mode. But if what I did is, I just drank a lot of water, and then I got into autophagy. My damaged cells either killed off or, created new ones and started repairing themselves. And then the mitochondria in the cells, which is kind of the energy creator of the cells,
right.
The weak mitochondria dies. So when you put your body through stress, and you can do it through hypoxia, meaning deprivation of oxygen. You can do it through cold tubs, going in really cold water. You can do it through water fasting. When you put pressure on the body, your weak mitochondria die. And that's a really good thing because they're replaced by brand new fighters, ready to just, and all these diseases like diabetes and cancer and all these things are a culmination of a lot of things, but in part, damaged mitochondria that just doesn't sits on the couch and eat donuts all day. And so, I'm a big believer in fasting. I'm a big believer in constructive suffering, whether it be cold water or, hypoxia or whatever. And, again, this is another topic I'm passionate about. I'm not an expert about at all, even close, but I love learning about it.
Yeah, well, and I think the other thing about it too, not only the learning about it, but and you may not be an expert. I'm certainly not an expert either, but you can feel the difference in your body when you go through and do it. So like
night and day.
Whether there's the seeing is believing. I mean, my dad's he's doing a week long right now, so he's in the middle of his.
Nice.
He's probably like 72 hours in, so I got him drinking the Kool-Aid. So.
Right on. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'll reach out.
Yeah.
Send him an emoji of some, delicious looking food. Say, how you doing?
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I think it's one of those things that definitely helps in the long run, kind of helps you stay, at least for me, it certainly helps me kind of stay focused and stay on track. It's super important, as you say, that kind of health. So kind of back to the schedule. So 7 to 7:30 to or 7 to 9:30, you are worried about the fitness, getting the endorphins going, and then kind of blocking out that day. So every Sunday is kind of the time that you take to build out your week. And do you scratch things that are going to stress you out, or do you try and attack the more difficult things first thing in the morning? Like, okay, 9:30, this is going to be the biggest pain of the ass of the day. Let's get this out of the way. Or how do you kind of approach that?
Yeah. So, I have a lot of help. Megan Lee, my executive admin, has been with me for 10 years. So she knows me as well as I do. So she's actually the one, hey, this is going to stress you out. You're like, oh yeah, you're right. So that's helpful. But if, for anybody else, yes, Sunday, that's the day to take a look at your schedule. I think, and look at Monday, look at Tuesday, look at Wednesday, look at Thursday, look at Friday, and say no to things. We got to learn how to say no to things. And that's not just like no to but we got to say no to our family members sometimes. Like, can't do that. Got to focus, got to do this. And saying no can be really hard because nobody wants to disappoint somebody. But in order to achieve balance in one's life or control over time, which is the hardest thing to do, I think we all have to learn how to say no. Now, my wife is giving birth in January, late December, early January. So I will be a father. Do I know what it's like to be a dad? No. And if anybody's listening that is a dad, is probably laughing at me right now, saying, "Ha ha, just wait, buddy. You think 7:30 to 9:30 is your time? Just wait." And that might be true. And so there will be new priorities, entering my life, and I'll have to recalibrate, and kind of be adaptable, and that's cool. But yeah, right now that's kind of my that's me time. 7:30 to 9:30, that's me time.
Now, kind of building on top of that, for people that are kind of, whether they're getting started in their athletic career, or they're in the middle of their athletic career, or they're trying to go into entrepreneurship or something like that, other than kind of the schedule and some of the things that we touched on, what would be a couple major pieces of advice for them?
Whatever goals that you're setting, they're not big enough. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
always push to create really big goals for yourself. Oftentimes we sell ourselves short, and we put these governors on our ability that are self-imposed, because oftentimes we're our toughest critic. Like, most of the time we are our toughest critic, and sometimes we're our smallest fan. Like, we're hard on ourselves, and so set these goals really big. And then the way I like to look at embarking on whatever journey, whether it be athletic or entrepreneurial or whatever, I like to think of the analogy of climbing a big mountain. So think about Everest, and when you reach the top of Everest, that's your goal. That's when you would accomplish your goal. Well, Everest has base camps. Everest doesn't, you can't summit it overnight. It has, death-defying obstacles of Mother Nature. Lots of people get to base camp 3 and have to hike back to base camp 2. And I think these analogies are true in life, where we hit these setbacks, we fall, we stumble, we slide back down to base camp 1. But if we always have a line of sight, and we're always calibrating that path to the top of Everest, for this example, I believe we're going to get to our goals. Now, it might not be the goal we set, but we're going to get to a goal that is meaningful. And so that's the way I like to look at it. The other thing that I would encourage people to think about, that I've had to learn in my life, is there's this concept called treadmill goal setting. And it's this idea or notion that if I could just accomplish whatever it is, X, Y, or Z, whatever the goal, if I could just accomplish this, my life would be complete. And that's just not true. Like, nobody reaches that goal and says, this is enough. Most of the time we reach that goal, feels good, and then we set another goal. So we're on this kind of proverbial treadmill, and that we're always setting these goals, accomplishing it, and never gives us the fulfillment that we need. And why I think that's important is because we should set goals for ourselves, so that when we reach them, we shouldn't think that they're going to give us fulfillment or happiness. And on the flip side of that, we shouldn't look at our own lives and say, well, I'm unhappy because I didn't accomplish that goal. I was an executive producer on The Way to Gold, which is a documentary on HBO. We had Michael Phelps, Paulo Ono, Shaun White, Bodie Miller. I mean, you go down the list of people. Yeah, and awesome. It was a documentary on mental health. And what was universally true, these are the most successful Olympians of all time, is that one, they all went through depression. Different levels, some extreme, some maybe more normal. And all of them have money and a trophy case full of medals. And I think the powerful message there for everybody, for society, is that money and trophies do not bring happiness. Everybody struggles. Everybody has a hard time. Everybody goes through moments of not being okay. And by normalizing that conversation, I think we disarm some people's anxiety around not feeling okay. If we know Michael Phelps goes through it, or if we know Michael Jordan also goes through it, if we know as a society all human beings have these inevitable ups and downs, it normalizes it. And that won't solve depression, but I think it'll help us take a step in the direction of doing so.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think one of those things that's super interesting about that, just from like my own perspective as an athlete, is I would, it's just another step along the way, or just chopping wood. And that's not very sexy. Because when you go through and you get that, the few times I was able to hit some of the goals, like a top 5 at nationals or something like that. And then at the end of the day, you're like, okay, I did that. I was really
What?
standing around. What's which they go into the documentary, and it's very true. And I think it definitely helps to normalize that situation, but I think it's also difficult. It's kind of one of those things you have to find out for yourself. You
do. Yeah.
I know it was interesting when my wife a few years ago, when she had won like selections and got to ski at the Deer Valley World Cup, and it's that big high, and then she's super excited, and after that it's just you're back at Steamboat skiing runs. It's back to the real world, and it's back to just chopping wood and making those kind of efforts and trying to get better each and every day. But it is deflating.
Yeah, it can be deflating, and that's very parallel to what all the Olympians said in the Way to Gold. It's like, hey, I thought my whole life that my life would be complete if I won an Olympic gold medal, and I won an Olympic gold medal, and then I won a second Olympic gold medal, and then I won a third, and it was not enough. It was never enough, and it never completed my life. And in other cases, it actually made me more depressed, made me more lonely, made me question the meaning of life even more, because I was so convinced that if I just won this thing, I just did this one thing, my life would be complete, and it's not. Yeah. I think there's some powerful learnings in that for all of us, especially as we map out our lives. I mean, Stephen Long said he only thinks 3 days ahead. I don't know what that would feel like.
He's short term. He keeps it short.
Yeah, I think there's some wisdom to that and beauty to that. But like guys and gals like me, like I think more long term, and for us to have a perspective of like, hey, these are important goals, but ultimately at the end of the day, they're not going to change who we are. They're not going to bring this happiness and fulfillment that is going to be long lasting. I think that's important, because then we can find it in more holistic areas, like intrinsically motivating things like learning, like building relationships, like helping other people. Those are three things that can actually have a long-term sustaining impact on happiness and purpose and meaning.
Now, kind of building upon that for you, because a lot of people do get set in their ways, and that is one of those interesting things, the hamster on the wheel, and you're kind of stuck in this rut, or most people are set in their ways by 23, I think it is, and then it takes a lot of hard work to change those neurons around in your brain, and a lot of focus and a lot of energy. So it happens at a very young age that you are set in your ways. So I mean, for you, because there's been tremendous growth and changes there, and what is it that has really been able to kind of help you make those changes, because they are so difficult to make that transition?
Well, it's another great question, and another topic I love and I'm passionate about. And as I mentioned, my dad's a psychologist, so I think understanding this from a biological perspective or a neurological perspective is important. When we're born, our prefrontal cortex, which is right here in the front of the brain, it's kind of the CEO of the brain. It gives us sort of self-awareness, kind of, our decision-making pattern. It's mush. So we just do whatever we think we need to do. We just learn as much as we, and as you get older, that prefrontal cortex gets harder and harder and harder, and more rigid and rigid and rigid. I don't know if it happens at 23. I'm not entirely sure when it happens, but probably at different ages for different people. But I will say, for anybody who's entered into their 30s or later 30s or beyond that, you feel it. You feel it. You feel yourself getting rigid. You feel yourself getting stuck in your ways. You have to fight to be open-minded more so than you used to. Now, there's psilocybin is a way for folks that are stuck, that are being used in very interesting clinical settings. Psilocybin or magic mushrooms used to be kind of a class 4 drug, which is the worst part of the drugs. Now we're starting to see it get legalized across the country. And we're also seeing, academic institutions and hospitals like Johns Hopkins come out with really staggering findings of what's happening with PTSD, people coming back from the military with PTSD, people with extreme depression, and people who have a death sentence through cancer or some bad disease. And what psilocybin does is it takes that rigid, prefrontal cortex, or these neural passageways that we've created from a young age, and it turns them to mush again. And parts of the brain that don't normally communicate with one another are now communicating with one another. And I'm talking about in a clinical setting. I'm not talking about going to a rave and doing mushrooms. I'm talking in a clinical setting, like setting is everything when you look at the clinical data for psilocybin. But remarkable, like feedback from people who are scared to death, 10 out of 10, who just found out they have two months to live, who do one dose of psilocybin in a clinical setting and are awakened with no fear of death. Not like none, like they know, and people coming back from the military and major PTSD, and then reporting it just going away, or very clinically depressed and finding relief in these things. And oftentimes, as a society, we get we're skeptical of panaceas, or in other words, things that just cure everything, right? So I don't think this is a panacea. I don't think anybody does. But there's new research and focus on a new class of substances that aren't pharmacological based. They come from the ground, that have really interesting possibilities on our ability to continue to stay open-minded and build new neural passageways and connections in our brain as we age, and deal with really serious conditions like depression, PTSD, and in a fear of death.
Yeah, it's super, super fascinating to kind of see how that world's opening up and changed in the last, just couple of years. I'm like, 11 years into the psych degree. Skiing kind of got in the way, but I'm almost there, dude. So I'll be with, Larry, and I'll be able to talk shop.
Amazing.
We'll be able to talk shop.
So awesome. So cool, man.
So no, it's super interesting, and how much that it's changing every day. The science, technology kind of brings a lot of interesting things that'll happen in the future, hopefully. Well, dude, I was thinking about it before you came on. I first met I was just a little camper, Camp Revolution, when I was 10.
I had to have been 7 or 8 years old.
I was young. I was a young pup back then, and then
Abby brought you up there. We did some Costco runs.
Of course. Yeah. And then dad became the agent, and it's been really just want to say thank you for all the years, all the time. I mean, since I was 9-10 years old, whatever it was, allowing me to tag along, follow you around, whether we would go see at a few Buffs game. I got to find for the next one we do, I got to find the Buffs jersey, because I know I have the mogul band before the NCAA would let you put, because you were playing, so you couldn't put Bloom on the back.
Right.
That damn NCAA.
Yeah, I know.
But just, through all the years and world championships, Olympics, going to watch and kind of cheer you on to go into, my first NORAM tour in 2009. You were kind of at Killington there. And then we both had a shitty result at nationals in 2000. It's not the way I remember sitting there, like at a pub. I was too young to drink at the time, but we were just sitting out on the patio in the sun, like, oof. This is 2009 was not, we were in Squaw, I think, right?
Yeah, Squaw Valley.
Exactly. And then coming back around to going to watch you make it into the Hall of Fame acceptance, and going down and seeing some tears in the old man's eyes, and going through that whole experience, and the journey has just really been awesome, man. So thank you so much for taking the time. I really do appreciate it, and hopefully next time we'll be able to do this in person once I kind of get the studio up and running. So thank you.
Man, it's my pleasure. You will always be family to me. Your whole family will always be family to me. I'm indebted to your dad and Debbie and the whole crew. So always a pleasure to see you. And thanks for the conversation. We covered a lot of ground, a lot of topics we covered.
And we didn't even get into bump skiing, dude. We haven't even gotten there yet, or some of so that we'll save that for the next one. But thanks a lot. I know you're a busy man, and really appreciate it, dude.
See you, buddy. Bye.
Thanks.
Hey, everybody. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And make sure you hit that little bell button so you get notified every time a new episode drops. Thanks.